I was a little bit worried with you being at the track.
Yes, no, I made it. There's going to be some background noise because they're still working, but I think you should be able to hear me just fine.
I think this particular audience is going to be incredibly tolerant of hearing the sounds of the track.
Awesome.
If I'm wrong, then they can tell me so in the chat, but I'm pretty sure some race car sounds are going to go over just fine.
Teresa was just waving as well.
Hey, Carissa. Hi. So that is Carissa Cobb. She is our logistics manager and has been with Kelly Moss for, oh my gosh, I think like 17 years, something like that. She is also married to professional race car driver and first-time U.S. Le Mans winner, Price Cobb. So, and Todd says more sound the better from the track.
Okay.
So everybody is absolutely willing to put up with your track noise.
All right, great. Very, very good.
Wonderful. Well, welcome everybody. We're really excited to have you here for our third and final of our training sessions. And this particular lesson is going to be on approaching a turn. So we're gonna just run through some very quick introductions, as well as a little bit of housekeeping, and then get right to letting Alec teach us all the amazing things that he knows on this particular topic. My name is Victoria Thomas. I am the CFO and one of the owners of Kelly Moss Road and Race. And with us, we also have Alec Udell. Alec is a professional race car driver. He is a trained engineer as well as one of our Kelly Moss driver coaches. And for those that are unfamiliar with Kelly Moss, we have been racing Porsches on track since 1988. And we are just about to put the last nail in the championship, which is where Alec is right now at VIR for the Sprint
Indeed.
Challenge. There you go, for the Porsche Sprint Challenge. And we just last weekend cinched up the, there is no way that we cannot win the team championship in the Porsche Carrera Cup North America. We have our team, we are in position 1 and position 2, so we're feeling pretty strong about that. But we are running in 4 different racing series around the United States, and next year is going to be even busier. So we're really excited about that and thrilled to have you here sharing in our racing knowledge. So just some very brief bits of information beyond the welcome and introduction. We're going to run through the housekeeping. We're going to go through approaching a turn, which is a topic that the people that are attending chose through a poll, and we're going to go into a little bit deeper dive on the Driver Academy and then dig into some Q&A. So if you could please be so kind as to put any questions with regard to the training or racing or anything that you want to ask Alec or I, please enter it into at the bottom of your screen. There's little quote icons that say Q&A. I think that we're all a lot more familiar with Zoom these days, but if you could put any questions that you have there, it just helps keep us organized. We'll run through as many of those as time allows. But if you could save those questions, we probably won't be addressing them until the end. So if you just stick them in there, we'll get to those. Secondarily, I ask of you to give yourself the gift of focus. Driving a race car requires an incredible amount of focus. So now's the perfect time to start. Try not to multitask. Try not to be on your phone. Try to stay truly focused. You gave us your most precious commodity, which is your time. So please honor that by focusing on the training that we have.
You too.
At the end, we're going to tell you how to get the recordings and the PDFs, as well as we're going to run through another session of our giveaways for those that are here live. And then because of all the questions that we've had and emails that we've gotten, Alec, I'm confirming this on the here and now, we are going to do another training on Saturday with I mean, yeah, oh my gosh, I have that listed wrong there. It's on Sunday.
Sunday.
I apologize. The training is Sunday, not Saturday, at 4 p.m. And it's going to be the same Zoom link that you have here. And it has been added to your Zoom calendar. So everybody should have access to that. You're going to go the same place. And we are going to, Alec, the training is going to be.
That is going to be about passing and defending. That was our fourth most popular poll item. And so we're just going to go through a brief kind of, what you need to know, about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll go into some Q&A. We'll probably have, another 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes on Sunday, not Saturday.
Sunday, not Saturday.
I will still be at the track on Saturday. So
got it. Sunday is much better. I apologize.
That's okay.
So, and then just to let people know, again, very briefly with the Driver Academy, we are letting only 50 people come into the Driver Academy. One of the things that we do is one-on-one strategy sessions, and there's some sort of time-consuming components that make it problematic for us to have larger groups of people come in. So we limit it to the first 50 people. And of those 50 people, they will have full access to everything in the Academy starting on October 21st.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and jump into now then approaching a turn, kind of the ins and outs of cornering. And this is, of course, one of the most important things when you're trying to go fast around a track is how do you approach a turn? How do you get through the turn? How do you get into the turn? So the first day we talked about braking, which is the first part of this presentation basically, but it's its whole separate concept because you have to understand how to brake and how to get into the entry of the corner before you can go through the corner and actually get through and have a successful exit of the turn. So we'll talk first about a racing line. Okay, like what is the racing line? It's going to be the most time efficient way around the track as possible. It's giving a kind of a combination of both geometric and physical elements that are in on the racetrack and everything. So what we're going to do, it's different, of course, than you're taught on the road, right? And so normally you're taught to turn from left lane into left lane on the road. And so a lot of times at the go-kart track that my family and I owned in Houston, I see people going around the track, and when I'm trying to drive and set up a pass around them, they'll turn from the inside of the track, and I expect them to track all the way out to the outside. So I'm setting up my pass for them, and all of a sudden they stay on the inside of the track, and you see their heads kind of flying out, like they're trying to, hold on to the carts, and they're not quite able to get themselves, in the place that they want to be on the track because they don't understand. Because we're taught so much in our driving is to be okay. We want to be, basically a short distance here and not being going too far around the corner, not using up all the track. Well, that's the exact opposite of what we do in a racing line. We go basically from what we'll talk about here in a second is from the outside edge of the track to the inside and back to the outside. But if you were with us on on Tuesday, you saw this graphic, the 3 parts of a turn. And so I like to break things down into as simple things as possible that they can be. And so I like to say, okay, we've got 3 parts of a turn. You've got the entry, which is in red here, the middle, which is in yellow, and then the exit, which is in green. So your entry, you're focused on, your brake point, your turning point, your braking zone, which is from entry to just before you make, your way down into the apex of the corner. The apex is that basically almost the center points of the turn. In normal turns, the double apex corners, you'll have 2 apex points, but the apex basically is where you get closest to the inside of the track. At the apex, you generally want to be touching or on the apex curbing, or the white line that's delineated by the track. Of course, there's exceptions to these things, and we'll go through that here in a little bit as well. But then on the exit, we're focused. Basically, what we've done here is if we set ourselves up properly coming into the turn, approaching the turn, then all we are focusing on the exit is tracking out, getting to the exit of the track, getting to the outside edge of the track, and getting to full throttle. So we'll pick up our throttle just after the apex here, and then we transition into opening up our hands, getting to the exit of the track. And when I say open up our hands, if you think about, okay, now I made my turn in here, opening your hands up is just opening the wheel and getting the wheel back straight as we're going out to the edge of the track.
Alec, can I interject something here?
Yeah, of course.
For anybody that was trying frantically to recreate that map, if you weren't here for any of our prior trainings, the presentation that Alec is working from will also be included with the recording that everyone that registered for this will have. So you will have access to that. You do not need to take notes to try to recreate the slides here, we'll get those in your hands.
Yeah, of course. No, that's a great point. And so again, just breaking down the points that you need to know on the racing line. You have your entry, which is braking, your downshifting, your turning in. Your middle, it's going to be your brake release. It's going to be the apex. It's going to be your throttle pickup. And then the exit, it's going to be where you get to full throttle and then track out. So kind of, again, breaking things down into very simple steps, into simple things. There's so much going on the track when you're out there that the more you can simplify and the more things that you can remember that you're on track just with simple mantras, the easier it is to actually make improvements, to actually drive well through the turns. So now we talked a little bit about what a racing line is. Well, how do you pick out the racing line? So as I mentioned already, the racing line is a combination of kind of these geometric and physical elements. And so what we're going to take into account is the track shape. You know, we're going to look at what are the different turns, what are the radiuses. We're going to look actually, and that's if you're just looking from the overview. But if we're looking at the actual track when we get out there, you're going to look at pavement composition. You're going to look at the angle of the ground. You know, how much is it? Does it have banking? Is it off camber? You're going to look at the curves, and you look at as well. Maybe there's different pavements that there's patches on the ground. You know, those different types of things, and those will affect the way that you actually apply your racing line. But in general, what we want to have is some sort of a ideal way of going through turns. And so we'll give this a second to load here. But basically, my general mantra, and I kind of alluded to it a second ago, is outside, inside, outside. And so again, all this information is great. There's all these great things that we can talk about, but I think I say it my best myself here. Ah, yes, you are expected to hear the audio. Victoria, are you hearing that or no?
Well, is on the video there's sound you're saying,
Yes,
Alec?
there is. That's okay. I can go ahead and narrate it.
Okay, yeah.
All good, all good. Sorry. Thanks for that chat there. Basically what's going on here is we've got outside, inside, outside. The second one here is not as ideal, right? The driver isn't making a point to get down to the apex. He's trying to carry more speed into the turn and carry faster speed through the exit of the turn. So what that's doing is pushing him away from the inside. He's not braking. He's not making a point to make my entry, get me set up to get down to the apex so then I can accelerate out. What we have here is an overlay of what happens. So they both carry roughly the same speed into the corner, but the second driver doesn't make it a point to get down to that apex. And then what it does is it ends up with him further behind as he gets to the exit of the corner because he's traveled a longer distance. So what we're doing with the racing line is trying to, we'll shorten the distance as much as possible while also carrying as much speed as possible. And so that's basically, if you boil the racing line down to what you're actually doing, you're maximizing your speed while shortening the distance of the track, making the track as short as possible. And so what we've done here, this guy might have maximized his speed into the turn, but then he didn't make the distance short, and he actually got outside of the grip, outside of the rubber line, and had a little bit of an oversteer moment at the exit. And what we'll look at here now is a little bit of a side-by-side. We've got a little bit of a buffering issue here. Okay, cool. Come on. So you set up from the outside edge of the track, you get down to the inside and then back to the outside. That's our ideal line that we're going to drive on those turns. So you can't hear that. I'll just explain it. Basically, what we're trying to do is, okay, all this information is great. What are the three things that I need to focus on when I'm driving around a corner? For me, it's always outside, inside, outside. That gives me a general understanding of like, okay, I know that I need to apply this call it formula to the different turns. But say like we're talking about, the turns 1 and 2 here at Indy. So what you end up doing is kind of making a little bit of a compromise for the exit, the turn that's leading onto your fastest part of the track. And so we'll get into a little bit of that here in a second. But the general mantra that I use anytime I'm approaching a turn, especially if I'm learning a track for the first time, is going to be outside, inside, outside. So getting back to our basics, right? Okay, how can we simplify this? Outside. So you begin the corner from that outside edge of the track. You want to start from the outside edge of the circuit. Inside, we want to get down to our apex in the middle of the corner, like we saw on the 3 parts of the turn. We start from the outside edge of the track. We get our braking done. We get our turn in done. We get down to the middle of the corner. We release off the brake. We're going to get into the inside, get to our apex, and then we're going to start opening our hands up, opening the steering, getting the car back straight, and we're going to get exit out all the way back to the outside edge of the track. Think when you're going through a turn, more radius equals more speed. And so that applies to the exit of the corner. We want to carry as much speed out of the exit of the turn. And so that's what we do. We open our hands up and we carry the speed out to the outside edge of the track. And of course, like I mentioned, there's always going to be exceptions. And so we have a couple examples here. We understand what the general ideal way to drive a turn is, but what are some exceptions? So there's a few things, and like I alluded to here a second ago, you've got turns that maybe are like chicane, so kind of like what what I was talking about with turns 1 and 2 here at Indy. You've got bus stops, you've got carousels, double apex turns, and so the track characteristics might dictate that you take a different line. So the outside, inside, outside, it's still going to apply though. So my focus here on this chicane, the track goes this direction. Down to turn 1, to turn 2, then to turn 3. Well, I want to focus on maximizing my exit here that leads on to this full throttle area. So what I'm going to do is go outside, inside, outside. I'll hold the car over just a little bit at the exit of turn 1 so I can get a later apex, go outside, inside, outside into turn 2. So you're kind of applying this on the fly as you go into corners. As I talked about a little bit earlier, double apex turns, you have your apex, you're going to have 2 different points where you're getting down to an apex. So what we do here at Oak Tree at VIR is you go down, you start from the outside edge of the track, you get down to the apex in at this first point in turn 11, you get back to the outside edge of the track on the exit, and then you go back from the outside to the inside, back to the outside. So there's different ways that you're going to apply these mantras, these concepts, but what I want to do is give you a basic, like, hey, here's how I approach a turn if I have no idea where I'm at on the track. If we talk about like the carousel, this is the carousel at Road America here. What we're going to do is come from the outside edge of the track. We're going to go down to the inside at the middle. This is our first apex. Then we're going to go back to about the middle of the corner because the car carries us to the point in that corner. And so what happens actually at the carousel is you actually have a little bit of camber, so you've got a little bit of banking in the turn. So if you were to use the full outside edge of the track, you're actually going to get less grip because the track flattens out a little bit. So there's a little bit, there's actually more grip, and that's going, and kind of applying these characteristics. And so part of the way that I determine how I'm going to drive a circuit is going out and surveying the ground and understanding, okay, like there's a little bit of camber here, there's maybe not as much there, so I want to be placing my car in different areas on the track. So then what we do when we get to the middle of the carousel here, we're going to lift off the throttle just a little bit. The car is going to rotate back, and then I'm going to accelerate, get back down to the apex at the inside and turn 10. Eye placement is going to be one of the ways that you can help get yourself going in the right place on the track. It's very funny, and something that there's a great YouTube video comparing a pro racer versus an amateur, and they've got, I believe, these like glasses on that track their eye movement. And when you see like the screen of the amateur driver, his eyes are all over the place. And you see the pro racer, it's very focused on where their eyes are placement and where their eyes are. And so pro drivers, again, are extremely intentional about where we're putting our eyes. It becomes almost like unconscious, and it's something that you have to focus really hard on. And like we talked about at the beginning of this presentation, focus is one of the things that's important for going fast on a racetrack, and this is exactly one of those things that it's important for. You got to be knowing where your reference points are, where your apexes are, where you're going. And so for me, keeping myself ahead of the car is extremely important in being able to understand, okay, where am I going to be at the exit of the corner? So I use my reference points kind of as a mental checklist of what I'm going to do in each particular turn. So the first thing you're going to do is pick out, okay, where is my braking points? So once I have that braking points, I'm going to once I have my braking point, I'm going to be able to pick up, okay, I see the braking point, eyes immediately go to the apex point. Once I sight the apex point, the eyes immediately are going to go to the track out. So that's kind of like the 3-step process of, okay, where am I going to be going through the turn? And what you want to be doing is making sure you're looking out and ahead, not straight down the windshield. We talked about this, I think, yesterday and the day before, really, but we are so trained to just be looking at the car in front of us and watching the brake lights and driving reactively. We want to get beyond that. We want to be driving proactively. We want to be ahead of the car that we're driving on the racetrack. So this is kind of the way that I do it. Is I always think one turn ahead. So I'm trying to plan, okay, what's my next step? What's my next step? What's my next step? The way that I do that is starting with braking markers, apex points, track outs. And immediately once I get to the track out, I'm already looking at the braking marker, the apex point, then the track out. And so those are all that's my process of how I'm making sure that I'm staying ahead of the car, because there's so much information coming at me that if I'm not ahead of the car, I'm kind of like, whoa, everything's coming at me very quickly. I can't process, I can't place the car in the part of the track that I want it to be. So that's why this is the third training as well, because it combines all these previous concepts that we talked about. If you get the braking right, things are going to be more calm. If you have understanding of what the track, where the track is, where the track goes, you're going to know, okay, these are the reference points that I need to use. And then you're going to be able to put those to work when you come and approach a turn. So a few things that people are, I get questions often like, okay, what do I need to use for my reference points? And so these are the things that I tend to use for my reference point. Obviously, the braking markers, like I just mentioned here, I tend to use, maybe for braking, you can use tire marks in the ground. And so you can actually see on the racing track where most people are braking. And so if it's a track that you're coming to for the first time and you don't know where to brake, look at where the braking zones are and see where the pavement gets darker. That's where the cars are slamming on the brakes and the ground's getting rubbered in. You see that maybe there's undulations in the pavement where you can kind of see it goes dark then light, then dark then light, because cars are going up and down. It's kind of the frequency of the suspension as they're braking in that particular braking zone. Maybe specific curbs of an apex curbing. If you're looking for your apex point, your rumble strips on exit are obviously going to be a great place to be looking for your track out. And then there's corner stations or other maybe immovable objects. There's the famed tree at the corkscrew at Laguna Seca. That's something that, is an immovable object that's going to be there every single time. Things that you may not want to be using for braking markers or for apex points are going to be cones, are going to be, maybe like a trailer or something in the background, that's going to be moved at some point or could be changed, or like a cone could be hit. Sometimes even braking markers can be hit. So it's good to have something on the track. I tend to like to use like painted lines on the track or braking, marks on the track, basically tire marks, whatever it is, because then I know like for sure that's not going to move. I know it's going to be there. Or maybe like a patch in the pavement, just stuff that I know isn't going to change from session to session. One of the ways as well that you can apply your knowledge to the racing track is, for me, when I'm looking for where's my line through a turn, the outside, basically when you're going through a turn, the outside tires are going to be what's putting down the black marks at the edges of the racing line. So if you're seeing like the black marks on the edge of the track, those are going to be the things that are basically where cars are putting their outside tires as you're going through the turn. So it gives you kind of an idea of like where you want to be. And so it's for me, there's, like I was just talking about down at the bottom here, you can kind of see the undulations in the pavement there at Coda, and that's where people are really, really hard in the brakes. So it's always about finding the things that are, easily picked up on the track, and then using those consistently, working your references down and changing those little adjustments that you need to make to go faster around the track. All right, so Victoria, I believe we're going to be talking here now through Q&A. So if y'all are ready to go on Q&A, if you have any questions for me on this topic or any of the other ones previously in the week, go ahead and drop those in the Q&A box there. I know there's a lot of information and I get excited about it, so I start talking very quickly, but if there's any slides you want me to particularly go back to or anything you want me to review, now's the time.
It looks like you did an excellent job explaining, and nobody has any particular questions in the moment. Good job, Alec. All right, so if nobody has any questions, I think that we will just continue moving forward. Oh, no, and then I said that and somebody had a question. Todd asked if you'd raced at Road Atlanta. I think a better question would be how many dozen times have you raced at Road Atlanta?
I've raced and driven there several times. I've been racing there since 2011. So I guess 10 years, which seems like not that long ago, but 10 years.
Let's see. Michael is asking, is using the rumble strips on the track out faster than not?
It depends on the circuit. You know, sometimes the rumble strips are too aggressive and they can upset the car, but sometimes if they're nice and smooth and they don't upset the car, then yeah, generally you want to use all the pavement that's there. And so again, what I said was more radius equals more speed. And so if you're using the rumble strips, you'll tend to have a little bit more of a radius, wider radius through that turn. So.
Great. Freddie said, as for one that's new to track driving, do you think it's more important to first learn the geometric race line or the ideal line? Ooh, good question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, what I do is how I coach people is to drive, you know, kind of the ideal line, because that's something that doesn't really change even car to car. There'll be small intricacies that you'll change car to car. But not necessarily, you know, things that are going to be huge. But the most important things are going to be your apex points. And so those will change a little bit if you go geometric versus ideal. But I find that geometric sometimes can put you in a interesting situation because it's more based off of, you know, what the track looks like rather than how you actually apply the track or how you actually apply a racing line to the track. So.
Todd asked, where do you set up the car position at the bridge?
Under the bridge, yeah, that means going over the hill into the bridge. So for Road Atlanta, going under the bridge, I set up right under. There's a like the kind of the flag, right? It's white, red, and yellow, and it's like right underneath the center of the flag, basically the center flag. And what happens is you end up going with two tires over the top of the dotted yellow line that's for the inside pit lane there. But yeah, I exit out of 10B, look up for the flag over the top, and it's like right at the midpoint of that flag, basically more over to the right side. But yeah, so that's where I line myself up.
Dave asks, and Dave, I love this question because I have absolutely asked it myself, and it's something that we talk about a fair amount. How do you determine the most critical corner at a track?
So Indy, for example, because we're here this weekend, this last turn, this turn, and this turn, those are going to be your most critical corners on the track. They lead on to the longest straightaways. So you're spending the most amount of time, you know, on these straightaways, right? So those two corners are going to be your most critical corners. Then beyond that, your slow corners are going to be critical, because if you think about, you know, when we're talking, if you go to like, you know, just highway, if you've taken a defensive driving course, which I have for, you know, reasons, but they teach you that like 10 mile an hour faster at 60 mile an hour is like, you know, if you go 70 mile an hour versus 60 mile an hour, you only gain like 8 minutes. If you go 80 mile an hour versus 70 mile an hour, you gain like 6 minutes for an hour drive. So gaining 5 mile an hour in a high speed corner, so like in turn 11 here, isn't going to give you as much as gaining 5 mile an hour in turn 7. So it's kind of picking out, you pick out, okay, what corners lead onto long straightaways? I want to make sure I'm maximizing my speed onto the long straightaways. And then you go, I want to make sure I'm maximizing my speed through the slow corners, because you spend more time in the slow corners because you're going slower. If you can gain 5 mile an hour in slow corner, you're going to gain more time than you would gain carrying 5 mile an hour in faster corner.
Justin says, the first time going under the bridge, I accidentally drove into pit road.
Yeah, that's happened I've seen that happen a few times.
And then Justin also said, is there such a thing as looking too far ahead?
Yeah, I think there definitely is as looking too far ahead. You know, you want to make sure that you're not getting beyond and you're going beyond basically where you're at on track and so far ahead that you're driving off the circuits, you know, because you're looking like way over on the other side of the track. But I would tend to say that, you know, if you're one turn ahead, that's pretty much where you need to be, even if it's just mentally, because sometimes the turns are blind and you can't really see where you're going. But you want to be, you know, 2 to 3 reference points ahead of where you're at the track. And so kind of working your way. And it's mainly about keeping your eyes looking up through the windshield again, rather than looking down through the hood.
Simon asked, can you expand on trail braking and where this should occur in a turn?
For sure. Let's go back to my graphic here of 3. Okay, perfect. So the trail braking, if we look at the 3 parts of a turn here, and again, you'll get this presentation, we've got our braking point. So from the braking point to the turn-in point, basically with an ABS style car, you're going to have pretty much your maximum brake pressure. And so what we'll see in a braking trace is it'll look something kind of like what we call a plateau. So the braking trace will go, let's see if I can't sketch on here. Yeah, okay, perfect. Okay, so the braking trace is going to look something like this, where you go up and then hold it to a peak, and then you're going to trail off down to the release, which then drops off here. So that's kind of what your braking pressure trace will generally look like in a turn like this. And so the plateau or the peak pressure is going to happen from 1 to 2. And then as you start turning the steering wheel, what you're doing is you're adding a side load into the tire. When you add a side load into the tire can hold less grip just in general, because it's being asked to do 2 things rather than just 1. And so if you were here with us on the first day, or if not, go back and watch the recording on the friction circle. It gives a better visualization of what that means. But basically the trail braking happens because we start introducing a sideways load into the tire. So we have to trail off of our braking pressure to give the tire some leeway, some rope to be able to start making a lateral movement as we start coming into the corner. So the trail brake happens basically from turn-in point to the release point. And the release point is generally will be right before you get to the apex. So we have our trail, which starts right here. So I guess if I drew this sideways, it might be a better picture, right? So we have our trail, our peak pressure here, and then we have our trail down to our release point there. And so that's kind of what our braking trace is going to look like. So this trail is happening basically as we're turning the steering wheel. Sometimes you turn the steering wheel almost right at the start of the braking zone, so your peak won't be that long, but it just kind of depends on the type of corner that you're driving.
So I think that, Matthew, that probably answered your question with regard to the trail braking. But if it didn't and you need more clarification, if you could just stick that in the Q&A. The next question, Daniel, who happens to be, Alec, not only local to Madison, but a KMR customer.
Oh,
and
cool.
In fact, our brand newest Driver Academy member. So
awesome. Welcome aboard.
Daniel said, can you elaborate on what the geometric versus ideal line
Sure.
versus racing line?
Sure. So a geometric line might look something a little bit more like this, where we're coming in a little bit earlier and getting out maybe a little bit earlier. You know, you're think about drawing like an arc through a turn with a compass. Basically, that's going to be like your geometric line. Your ideal line is going to look a little bit more like what I've drawn here already. And then the racing line can sometimes be somewhere in between, or it can be, you know, your ideal line basically that you've drawn on the track. But the ideal line also is going to be more so like if this turn has a bit of banking to it, my racing line is going to be a little bit different than the ideal line, because I might be able to turn in a little bit earlier and get a little bit more, actually not get quite as close to this apex, because I have a bit of a banking almost to catch the car as I get to the middle of the corner. So the racing line is the application of an ideal line. The geometric line is kind of how you would draw like a nice smooth arc through the turn.
Great. We're going to try to do a couple more questions really quick, and then we're going to need to move on. Kenneth asked, what is your process of finding your brake marker? For instance, realizing you're braking early and finding the limit.
Yeah, that's a great question. My process for finding how deep I can brake, again, first I go back to, okay, what's on the track that I can use for references? If I can see, you know, dark spots on the pavement, okay, that's generally where most cars are hitting. And it's funny that, like, of the two different cars I drove this year, or the three different cars, I guess, I've drove the Cup car, the Lamborghini Super Trofeo car, and then an AMG GT4. So all three of those cars, they tended to brake within like 50 feet of each other. So it kind of depends, but you usually will be within pretty close reference, unless you're driving like an open wheel or a prototype. But that's a little bit different story. But you use visually first what you can see on the track where people are braking. If you don't really have any good visuals, okay, start with the braking markers, and going into the corner, brake, do your hard braking, you know, and in a pretty sharp corner like this one, you're probably going to be at like an 8 or a 9 on a brake pressure on out of scale of 10. If you find that you get to the apex and you release off the brake really easily, the corner's no problem, okay, we'll go a little bit deeper, go a little bit deeper, go a little bit deeper. You know, you don't want to just go in and, you know, kind of throw yourself in 100 feet deeper the next lap. I, you know, kind of chunk my way down in like 10 to 20 feet increments, or 10 to 20 meter increments, depending on how far the braking zone is. And once I get to the point where I just barely miss the apex and I have a little bit of understeer at the middle of the corner, by understeer, I mean I turn the steering wheel and the car's not turning and the steering gets a little bit light, I know, okay, I've gone too deep. I need to back up my brake zone just a little bit. So that's kind of my process of how I get to my braking point. I go to where I first think that it should be. I make little steps forward. I find that I went too deep, and then I back it up a little bit.
Richard asked, will the ideal line vary dependent on the performance, horsepower, and braking of a car?
Yeah, certainly. And I would say maybe less so horsepower, I guess horsepower and braking, but if you consider maybe weight is probably one of the best ways to describe how the line will change. But it also depends on kind of the setup of the car. If you'll talk about like a like a mid-engine versus a front engine versus a rear engine, you know, sometimes the lines are different between those different cars. Generally the line is similar, and the way that you make the rotation in the middle of the corner is going to change. So your turn-in points are going to be similar within, 10 to 20 feet. Your apex point, again, is going to be similar within 10 to 20 feet. If you got a car with a lot of horsepower, little weight, you're going to want to get that car straight as possible as early as possible. If you have a car with very low horsepower and similar amount of weight, you're going to want to roll as much speed through the corner. So you might actually err more towards the geometric line rather than the ideal line. So it just kind of depends on the car that you're driving. But like like a Miata or an MX-5 versus like a Super Trofeo car, the line's going to be a little bit different, because in Miata you're actually sliding and you're using the slide of the car to finish that extra little bit of braking right at the apex of the corner, rather than the Super Trofeo. You're pinning it down on the nose with the braking, getting the car rotated right at the mid corner with the brakes finalized, and then rolling into the power and using opening your hands up at the exit. So I'd say your entry, maybe the turn in and the entry to the apex, so the end of the entry and the beginning of the mid corner might change, but the exit of the turn, mid to exit, is basically going to be the same from apex out.
Okay, we've got 2 questions left, Alec, and then we are going to move on. Dave asked, how do you gain the discipline to not watch the guy's line in front of you versus hitting your perfect line? It's so easy to follow the person in front of you.
Yes, it is very easy to follow the person in front of you. I find that the best way to break that habit is to start with a braking zone. It's so inviting to go into a corner and brake just a little bit deeper than that guy ahead of you. But then what happens is we gain on the way in. It's very nice to gain on the way in. Very easy. Feels, it's that instant gratification that we're all used to with our cell phones, right? But then you get to the mid corner and like, oh shoot, I can't make the turn. And then on the exit, the guy gaps you. if you can get your braking point right going into the corner, you're able to control your line through the turn. And that's the way we talked about on Tuesday, on the first day of training, we talked about how braking sets up the whole turn. Again, same thing here in the 3 parts of the turn. Your braking sets up how you come into the turn. So if you can get your braking point down, that's the best way to control the way that you drive through the corner. So that's the best way to break the habit of, okay, I'm driving this guy's line. Because all you're doing is the first thing that happens when you're going into a corner is you see the guy's brake lights, you brake where he brakes. So I tend to like to give myself just a little bit of a gap, especially if I'm trying to pass someone, just a little bit of a gap on the way into the corner so I can accelerate and get to power before that guy does, so I can get a better exit out of the turn. That kind of goes into passing and defending, and we'll get to that on Sunday.
Bonus training. Okay, last question from our friend Mickey, who says, what is the best way to gauge best turn in on a corner? I would say, Mickey, our driver academy has, I don't know, like I don't know off the top of my head, 11 different types of corners, and you give how to drive each of them. But anyway, assuming that I studied the track map and am now experimenting with the corner to find the fast line. So again, what is the best way to gauge best turn in on a corner?
Yeah, for me, it's the point where I can turn the steering wheel, get down to the apex, and open my hands up. Very, which, I guess is very simple, right? But we go back to our drawing that we've got here. My turn-in point is going to be the point where I can, get 80% of the corner done before the middle of the corner. That's what I want. That's what I want to focus on. If you heard like the Pareto principle, it applies in racing as well. You want to get 80% of the turn done before you get to the apex. And then the last 20% of turning, you can focus on opening your hands up, opening the steering, getting to the exit of the track, and putting the power down. If you're finding that you're turning, you're able to get straight on the exit of the track, okay, and on the inside, not using the full track, you've probably turned too late. If you're finding that you're consistently running to the edge of the track, having to lift right here at the edge, probably turning too early. So for me, it's about, okay, where's the point in the turn, or in my turn in, to where I can turn in nice and smooth, get down to the apex, open my hands up, and not have to worry about correcting too much on the exit.
Great. Thank you for all of the answers and for all of the fantastic questions. I think that it's really easy to see how really helpful it is for everybody to be able to learn from other people's questions. So that's great.
All right.
Okay, so looking back, I think that what we see is that we have been able to hopefully show you a little bit of a mind shift, which has to do with how much learning can actually happen off of the track versus everybody's goal and even their frustration is track time is expensive and time away is expensive and vehicle repairs can be expensive. And if all of your learning is at the track, then you are starting out putting a lot of pain points onto yourself that are unnecessary. So our hope with these 3 trainings is that we've been able to show you that there's an incredible amount of learning that can happen off of the track. And then Alec, if you can go to the next slide. Yep. Now that we understand how much work can be done, how might that affect you? How might that change how you approach how you're going about achieving your goals as it comes to your on-track career? So most people are starting to see what might have felt like something that was less attainable is now more attainable because, again, there are a lot of constraints that happen with, as we talked about yesterday, if you love basketball, you can get to a court pretty easily and practice as much as you want. If you love racing, it's not as easy to get to Laguna and to get to all of these different tracks that you might love. So we're trying to make you be able to achieve your goals in a different way. So what does that look like for us? For sure, we have a time approach that's different. With learning at home versus at the track, we have less time away from our families. We have less time away from our work. We have less time traveling and in the airports and driving from the airport to the track. We have less time when we're at the track actually learning what the track feels like and learning how we're supposed to be turning and learning how we're supposed to be braking. And don't get me wrong, you can't read books over and over and over again and be able to swim. You actually have to swim. But what I'm saying is that there's an incredible advantage to maximizing your time. And what that gives us is decreased stress and increased satisfaction. So in addition to the advantages of time, we have incredible advantages when it comes to money. So we don't have to pay the track fees. We don't have to pay the travel. We don't have to pay the car repairs. Once again, decreased stress and increased satisfaction. And lastly, when we look at this, we have enjoyment. Ultimately, everyone that's involved in this sport is involved in this sport because it provides some type of satisfaction and joy and pride and fulfillment. And I strongly advocate that when you have decreased lap times, when you have decreased stress, when you have decreased risk, when you have decreased costs, when you have decreased spousal stress, decreased learning time on the track, your joy from your time on the track is going to be exponentially higher. It is incredibly fun to be on podium. Alec, is that not the case?
Oh yeah, it totally is.
Exactly.
I have a saying, I don't like champagne, but I think the only thing it's good for is spraying. So
I think I've been handed bottles of unconsumed champagne from you on more than one occasion.
yeah, for sure, because I don't like it.
No. And it
Gotten better at
is,
spraying it though, so that's good.
it is sticky and kind of burny and
Especially
but
the type that they give you on the podium, which is great. You know, it tastes very sweet, but it's just one or two swigs is plenty.
yeah, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're doing is we are guaranteeing for you all of this. And how are we going about that guarantee? I will show you. And forgive the pausing, Alec just sort of instinctually understood that I was just going to continue with his slides. So he's driving and doesn't even know what I'm going to be talking about on each of these slides. So thank you, Alec, for that.
Of course.
Before we dive any more into the Academy, who is it for? This is perfect for people that are just getting started, for people that are trying to go from kart to car, for people that are doing DE and track days. If you're a PCA driver, you're starting out with your wheel to wheel. Anybody who, even, we have been competing on high levels at IMSA, and somebody had asked me, would you have your IMSA drivers do this academy? I can tell you that I feel very confident that particularly if you're somebody who is studious, you will glean things from every lesson that's in here. Now, when you are at the point where you are perpetually having personal driver coaches that are working with you all the time, for sure the amount that you're going to glean is less. So I would say when you're at the level that you have someone that is working with you professionally, you have less to gain from this. But at this price point, you have very little to lose. So I wouldn't discourage anybody from doing that. That said, Alec, if you can go on to the next slide. We'll talk about who this isn't for. So there is less to learn for circle track, for dirt track. And I was going to say motorcycles, but actually Zachary made a comment that sport bikes are exactly the same when you talk about eye placement. So there might be little bits and pieces in there, but largely, if you're an F1 driver, this is not the program for you. So that's just a little bit. So the people that it makes sense for can continue to focus on and what we're going to be talking about next. Next slide, Alec. All right, now what we're going to do is go inside the academy, and I both Alec and I worked really hard. If you weren't here for the first day of training where we sort of talked about the why of the academy, when I came to Kelly Moss 11 years ago as an accountant who was hired to determine the profitability of each of their profit centers, and eventually was extended an offer to come on board full time. And then eventually now, obviously as an owner. When I first came on board, we ran, like 4 race cars. And what would happen is the Kelly Moss shop would shut down when people went racing, and then they bring the cars back and we would open back up and fix the repair cars and go back out again. And that is not anything close to what we are today. And we worked really, really hard to not only grow Kelly Moss, but also to diversify. And if you would have talked to me at the beginning of 2001 or 2000 rather, I would have said we've worked so hard and we're incredibly diversified. We now have 120 some project builds going on in the shop that are a very different client avatar than our racing client. So we have successfully diversified, and as everybody experienced, in a matter of a couple of days, you learned that everything about your world was changing. And it didn't matter that we had diversified incredibly. Our doors were shut down and we could not go to the racetrack and we couldn't come in and turn wrenches in the shop. And I went, wow, we really didn't diversify. So what we did is we worked together to take all of the knowledge that we had that we could not give to people because of the situation and get it in a format where we could share it with anybody that was interested. So instead of having to be an incredibly successful, wealthy person who can afford to come onto our team and buy a $400,000 car and hire the best of the best. So you've got Alec as your driver coach and our engineers are flying in from other countries to provide you the best experience. If that's not you, you now have access to an incredible wealth of knowledge, which is within the courses of our Driver Academy. So Alec and I worked really hard pandemic time to bring all of this together, and we're super proud of what we've brought together. So I am going to fumble through my sharing my screen with you and show you. Alec, you'll have to let me know what this is going to look like in terms of the visibility of this. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, it looks great.
Yes, we did it. I match our screen.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Okay, so this is the inside of the Driver Academy, and I'm just going to highlight a few little bits and pieces that we have in here so you sort of get an understanding of it. We have these different categories here that you see all along the side, and if you click into the start, for example, which is where you would begin, with the exception of the start, there's no particular order that you have to go through the academy in. There's a lot of information there, but truly big chunks of this are meant for you to sort of pick and choose a la carte. So it shouldn't at all feel overwhelming. You shouldn't feel pressured to go through a to-do list. There's not a rush to get through this information. It's always there waiting for you for when it can serve you best. So the first thing that you come across is a video. When I click on this lesson, this is just I'll pause this. This is just a video of, that's awesome. I'll pause it somewhere else. Okay, this is just a video of me sort of explaining the Driver Academy. The next video that you will see, I promise you I'm not going through 68 lessons. The next video is just an introduction of who Kelly Moss is. And then finally, the last one is sort of a training video that I've done that takes you through how to use the Academy and what all of the different sections mean. So I'm not going to get into all of that today, but I want to show you a little bit more about what's in here. So just so that you can follow along, I'm going to use the breadcrumbs at the top and go back to my categories. And I just want to show you some different examples. Under the basics category, all of this is information that you should sort of digest and understand before you go to the track. It is unwise for you to be on track and not understand flags, and turn approach is a very basic thing that you should have an understanding of before you get to the track. So a lot of this is
after our presentation today.
What's that?
I said what you do after our presentation today as well.
Yep. Exactly. So if we just go into data basics, one thing is every one of the lessons that have video have closed captioning here. So if you're in a situation where you are just wanting to read along, that is possible. And so you can see this is Alec Stone. He is our data engineer, and he is going through talking about data basics. So we have a full lesson for him there, and as well as worksheet. And when I click on that, it downloads a worksheet for us here. Oops, I can't see to get back to the Academy. Okay.
Oh, it's on the top there. There you go.
Yeah, I thought it was hidden. So going back through the breadcrumbs to the categories, again, our basics is a general understanding that we want to have. Race car is sort of an understanding of your vehicle. So we've got alignment and tire pressure and how to nut and bolt your car, basic mechanics, brakes, tires, all of that type of information is all found within the race car category. The next category we have is probably what everybody gets most excited about, and that is racecraft. So everything within here for certain is going to affect your lap time. If you don't have an understanding of alignment, if you don't have an understanding of managing wheels or managing tires, that will definitely have an effect. But in terms of your actual racecraft, that's where people are looking to find the skills. Oops, I just clicked on the wrong thing again. The actual skills to eke out some extra time going a little bit faster on the track. So like I alluded to before, what we have in here is we have the different types of turns. And so this is just going to be Alec talking about the different types of turns. And then we also have worksheets that are in, I don't know if that downloaded, worksheets that are in here. And just like before, we showed you where instead of having to try to figure everything out, here, Alec alluded before that we have visual learners, auditory learners, and kinesthetic learners. And we try very hard to encapsulate all of that in all of the different trainings. For those that are kinesthetic, they're going to look at this sheet that should look familiar to you about your line and a turn. And then we advocate that once you have an understanding of that, you start to put the lines in here without using the cheat sheet. And, you start to be able to fill some of this information out with less help from Alec on that. So again, just going back into the racecraft so that you can see how much is in there. We've got all of our different types of turns. We have line of sight. So someone had a question with regard to line of sight. Where you're looking and what's happening visual is incredibly important and also very different than when you're in a car on the street. When you're in a car on the street, you want to be higher so that you can see more. And when you're in a race car, you want to be lower. So, there's all of the different types of lessons on all of that. Vision in traffic, which was exactly one of the questions that someone asked today. How do you not follow the person that is in front of you? And in this particular lesson, we have Andrew Davis, who is another one of our professional driver coaches, who's articulating So it's not just Alec or I that's going through this. We lean on a lot more members of the team to give us information about that. In our preparation, we have everything from sim training to the advantages of using driver coaches, learning how to utilize mental imagery, which was an incredible component of our yesterday lesson, cause and effect, understanding limits and rebounding, and all of these are going to have, almost all of them are in video format because people seem to enjoy consumption in that way as much as possible. We try to do that, but we also have a lot of information in the mental imagery one. There isn't a video, but when you download it, you can see there are lessons and trainings to walk you through actionable steps to be able to get yourself closer to where you're wanting to go in terms of that particular topic of using the mental imagery. The resources is another thing, very, very a la carte. But what we have in resources is the track notes like we talked about yesterday. So all of the major tracks in the United States, it's not just the major tracks with some notes about, generally speaking about the tracks. We're talking about Alec's notes about how hard you should be braking at what corners, and like full notes from a professional driver to help you drive those tracks faster. We have a whole section on radio communication, what's expected, how you communicate with each other, what's appropriate. For sure, one of the lessons that we talked about, knowing your corners when you're driving is incredibly important when you're communicating with a team, for example, so that we know where you are and what's happening on the track. Track journals.
So Victoria, with all of this, what's the steps to get people into it?
So we can go to, Alec, if you want to screen share again.
Yeah.
One of the things that I did want to mention, though, well, we can, yeah, if you want to screen share your screen again, we can go to the next slide. So we have a promise that the program is the most comprehensive online program in the industry, using all of our years of success to provide greater joy on the track, and we absolutely guarantee that. And very specifically, what you get are the 65 lessons. Alec, if you want to go to the next slide, please. The 65 lessons, you get a personalized strategy session with a professional driver coach. The discounted track days, we actually have a track day at Autobahn in Illinois coming up on October 28th. If there's anybody here that has interest in going to that event, that would make the Driver Academy about $297. So that would save you a whole lot right out of the gate. But you also get a KMR shirt, and you get the Driver Academy keychain. Let the whole world know that you're on the KMR team. And again, all of that comes with a money back guarantee. But we are absolutely limiting this to 50 people. So what I would say to you is, if it could be so easy that you could pen a check to be a better driver, would you? Because that's basically what you get is with the $797, which is the fee for the academy, you get the best in the industry. You get the team that is winning all of the championships. And so that training from us to you is available for a full year, and you would have access at your convenience to learn from home. Hands down, if you are somebody that's getting out there at the track, there's no way that you're not going to save time and save money with this experience. And Alec doesn't know this, but through the end of the day Sunday, we're doing 3 payments of $297. So we have a 3 payment plan that's just through Sunday, and it will be going away after that.
And what are the terms on that 3 payment plan?
There's 3 payments.
Right. What
It's $297. So you would pay the $297 at the time that you order, and then in 30 days it would be another
Okay.
$297, and 30 days after that. I was just kidding with you,
No, no. That was a silly question. I apologize.
Alex.
Yeah. So where would they, if someone was wanting to join in, and where would they go to do that?
So what I did is in the chat, the very first line of the chat is your link to go to the checkout page for the Driver Academy. And actually, if you look at the very bottom of that checkout page, you're going to see the 3 payment option is the very last item on that page. And again, that will only be there through Sunday night. When I wake up Monday morning, I will be removing that.
Awesome.
Danielle is asking about more information about the track day at Audubon. You've got it. Alec, do you want to just talk about that quickly? And then Danielle, I can send you over something as well.
Yeah, definitely. So the Audubon track day is going to be kind of a mixed bag, basically. But what we're aiming for right now is to have basically a 2-group session, and in the morning we'll start out with a bit sort of like what we've been doing here, about 30 to 45 minutes of kind of talking about specifically how you apply racing line and how you apply driving at Audubon. And then we'll go into a little bit more in depth of the topics of like weight transfer, trail braking, and kind of which corners you're going to want to be using these techniques. And that'll be a bit more kind of lunchtime. And then in the interim, there's going to be alternating 30-minute sessions between 2 groups, or maybe alternating 20-minute sessions between 3 groups, depending on what kind of performance level cars that we have there. And then we'll have time to do a little bit of data review or video review in between the sessions. So it's going to be a lot going on, but we'll be there basically giving people the opportunity to kind of come and experience what it is like to be at a track day event and have, kind of a pro coach that's able to go through the data, talk through specific turns, talk through, how you apply the brake pressure, talk through those different kinds of things, and get a little bit more intimate with that particular car that you've got, and give a bit better understanding what you've got going on. And then also just learn how to drive fast around Audubon. That's kind of the goal there, is to go a little bit quicker.
And so we chose Audubon because of its proximity to the airport in Chicago, in terms of people that are coming from other parts of the United States being able to become active in that. And also Audubon does have car rentals. So the hope was that would open the door for a lot more people to be able to attend the session.
Hey, Victoria, I see a question there. What support or information do we have regarding race licensing?
So we absolutely have support. I mean, one of the things that we're working on for people that are interested in PCA, Porsche Club of America, is that we are going to be partnering with Porsche Club of America. They will acknowledge the Driver Academy when they're reviewing people's licenses, in terms of getting a nice plus on the report card for being involved with Kelly Moss and the licensing. We have people on staff. Actually, if you happen to be here at the very beginning when Alec came on and introduced Carissa Cobb, Carissa is very active in the racing licensing and is a resource for our Academy members. So if you have questions and that type of thing, we're able to help you out with that. Are there other track day events where the $500 discount will apply? Absolutely. The more Academy members we have, the more ability that we will have to do more track events. It's a little difficult because we're trying to keep the price point. I mean, I can tell you that our KMR driver team, when they do a track event, when they come out to an event for a day, pay about $28,000. So we're trying to keep it down to the $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 range for everybody. And when we have fewer people, it's harder to keep it in that price range. So what our intention is to do track days every quarter. And we're going to try to do, for sure get up to Road America. We're going to do some in Texas. We talked about doing some in New Orleans. So our hope is to be able to grow the Driver Academy a little bit more so that we have more people and then we can keep those costs down.
Yeah. And we're getting a few more questions, which are great questions, but we are a little over on the time, which is totally cool. But we do have that extra Sunday afternoon session that we'll be doing again. And I'll be going through a little bit of a training, kind of like we did today. And then again, able to answer any more questions specifically pertaining to like driving or driver coaching and those kinds of things. So I just want to kind of acknowledge a couple of those questions.
Yeah, and if you see in the chat, I did include the link for the Driver Academy. In addition, I have my email address, which is just victoria@kellymoss.com. Hopefully that's visible to everybody in the chat. If you have any questions at all, please let me know. And otherwise, we will look forward to seeing people perhaps on Sunday at 4 o'clock.
And then one more thing before everyone jumps off here, but we do have our live membership that we are launching alongside this academy. And so again, we have 50 spots for that. And what it is basically 2 times a month we have live calls. So 2 times a month I'll do a training like this, or 1 time a month I'll do a training like this, and then we'll have 2 weeks later a Q&A call. So that gives us again a bit more kind of open communication that allows us to, talk through the different aspects of how you go fast on the racetrack. Actually, on Tuesday of this week, just after we did our training here, I went into with our current academy members and did a training on rain line, how you drive fast in the rain and kind of the mindset that it takes to go fast in the rain. And so, kind of stuff like that. And then not next Tuesday, but the following Tuesday, we'll be doing a Q&A call specifically talking about, okay, any questions that might have come up, maybe people were able to go out and kind of put to use the things that we talked about. And so it gives us a little bit of time to space out, get and kind of sink into what we talked about, which is really awesome. And so there's a discounted rate if you're buying the buying into the academy, and then there's a higher rate. Victoria, I'm not sure what the numbers are.
If you are an academy member, you get the monthly for $29. If you are not an academy member, and again, so this is multiple trainings a month that happen, and the ability to submit questions so that we can answer your specific questions. There's also a community that's involved with the Driver Academy that I didn't mention, totally separate from social media. If you think about sort of a Facebook group, but there isn't any of the other world there, it's only academy members that can buy cars, sell cars, ask questions about data systems, all of that type of stuff can happen within the community. It's only Kelly Moss academy members that are in the community. That comes with the academy as well. But in terms of this membership, it's $29 a month add-on to be part of the live sessions and trainings and get all of the recordings of those. And if you're wanting to only do the membership with the conversations like we're having here and have had the last couple of days, then that is $49 per month. So yeah. I will, when I send everybody the recording from this, I will send the link to the page for the Driver Academy. I will send the link to just the membership for the live trainings.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's, from my point of view here, my goal is to help more drivers just realize the goals that they have on track. And so that's where this all started for myself. And I have been super fortunate to be able to join forces with Victoria, with Kelly Moss on it. And it just kind of has been an awesome journey. And so this is something that we're going to continue to grow and continue to make better. It's not something that we're just setting and forgetting. We're actively right now re-recording some of the content that we've got in the academy because we just felt that it wasn't quite exactly what we wanted. So it's something that we're I'm committed to personally to just making sure that everyone in here is having, a useful, basically having utilization out of it, and it is able to make progress and make those steps forward in their driving endeavors. So it's been an awesome journey, and we're just starting. So you're kind of getting in at a more basic level, even, or not basic level, at the beginning of something that's going to continue to grow and continue to be a large force that's going to change the way how people look at the like basically learning how to drive fast on the racetrack.
Exactly. So we will get everybody the recording. We'll get everybody the links. Any questions that we did not get answered, Alec is going back, looking at those questions and recording answers for people. So we will answer all of your questions. Again, email me. I'm absolutely available. And hopefully there are a few of you that would be able to make our bonus training. And then the doors to the Academy are going to absolutely close on Tuesday. So at the end of the day, next Tuesday, no matter where we are, and if it's like last time, I mean, we had, we're again only taking 50 members. So, and we have already had people that are signing up. So the first 50 or Tuesday, and then the door closes. We open the Academy the beginning of July, and then close the doors and worked with our members until now, and we will be doing much the same. So. Hopefully we hear from you, and hopefully you found this beneficial. It was a joy to have you along for the ride.
Very good, very good. And I just saw a note about a giveaway for today. I think Victoria, you'll send that out in an email.
I will. Hey, Alex, super quick. Just give me a number between 1 and 41.
17.
17. Okay. So Dan Stouffer is the lucky winner of the Driver Academy Journal and the sticker set. And every single person that made a comment in the Q&A and the chat is officially registered. I'm going to print out both of those. I'm going to number them all, and I'm going to make Alec pick a number. So
Awesome.
Congratulations to Dan for being yesterday's winner, and we'll look forward to talking to y'all soon.
Very cool. Y'all have a wonderful evening. Thanks for staying on with us for a little bit over our time, and we will see you on Sunday for our bonus training.
All right. Take care.
Cool. Bye.
Bye.